Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 54 of Monorail Memoirs. Today, we're going to be talking about the most emotional rides in Walt Disney World. Lauren, just before we started this, you said you struggled to have any sense of feelings, or something like that.
Not sense of feelings, just struggling to kind of think about what makes me emotional, but also what may make somebody else emotional. You know, kind of the first timer who doesn't have that nostalgia kind of attached to it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's that kind of brief that I struggled with it, because someone might be going for the first time in a few months, watches this to get tips and tricks, blah blah blah, and then they sat on a ride that I've said is dead emotional, and they're like,
Yeah, okay, nostalgia plays a huge part of emotion, it really does. I get that. What I've got is I've got a list here. I've got a whole list. And I want to discuss them, but I want to open the floor first to you. When the idea of the most emotional rides in Walt Disney World come to the fore, what is the first thing that you think about?
so it's kind of a bit of a cop out, really, because it was not a ride. It was more of an attraction. So obviously the fireworks,
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
because that was our first dance song at our wedding. You know, the Happily Ever After song. When the DJ announced it, he said, "Guarantee no one's going to know this song." And then a few people were like, you know, like they realised what it was, and it was really lovely. But that is 100% what makes me emotional. I just cannot explain the feeling that I get standing on Main Street watching those fireworks. It's absolutely amazing. So yes, that makes me massively emotional.
I'll buy that, and I accept it's not necessarily a conventional attraction. I think one of the things that Disney does really well is, unlike Thorpe Park or Six Flags or whatever, is because there's so much theming. It isn't just about the rides themselves, and
Yeah.
and that's what leads me on to the fact that you can get these sort of emotional moments at any point. I think, and whilst it's never been a factor for me, I think the idea of like little children being able to meet their favorite character and stuff, I can imagine that holds a certain degree of, like sort of emotion within you to see them running up to Goofy or Donald or whatever, whoever their favorite may be, and giving them a hug. That's got to mean something.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it's less the rides that are emotional and it's more the experiences.
Mm.
So it's a bit like when I took my son to Tusker House character dining. Obviously, you have the Fab Five there, but in all of their safari gear, and he was
Hmm.
obsessed with animals at the time. He was dressed as an explorer. He had his jacket on with all the pockets and the bucket hat and everything. And he met Mickey in one of the best places ever, having just come off the safari, eating his lunch. He just absolutely loved it, and it was that bit that made me massively emotional as well.
No, I understand that. That's quite nice. If we think about attractions specifically, though, no one's going to be surprised by what I consider to be the most emotional attraction in Walt Disney World. So, given the fact that a few weeks ago it was announced the Carousel of Progress is fundamentally changing, which means it's closing on the 5th of July, so obviously just after the 4th of July celebrations. It's closing on the 5th of July. It's not going to be open again until next year. It's been a complete revamp, a complete new voice actors, obviously, because half of them are no longer with us, but completely new voice actors, new scenes, new animatronics. Instead of being the turn of the 20th century, the 1920s, the 60s, and then the future, which is actually about the early 2000s, it's now going to be the moon landing, July 1969. It's going to be an evening on Halloween in the 1980s. It's then going to be a Y2K, so New Year's Eve from 1999 to the year 2000. And then the future is genuinely projecting to the future, sort of horizons level idea of the future. Now, everybody knows that it's my favorite attraction. It's one of the last ones that Walt actually dealt with himself. And yes, there have been some changes. I understand that. But the idea of the 1964-65 World's Fair that he worked on, this is a direct line of correlation to it. So for me, it's very emotional. And, I think one of the things that gets me is the idea of following the American family through the 20th century is just so heartwarming and wholesome for me. I'm genuinely not pleased that it's changing.
Yeah, I kind of, when that news broke, I was thinking, I instantly thought of you, and I thought, oh no, he's not going to take this very well at all. I know that we went on it, obviously, a couple of months ago now, but obviously not knowing, I find it really difficult not living anywhere near there, not knowing when that is going to be my last time.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So now that I know that that has been my last time riding that attraction, I'm thinking, oh, did I really take it all in? Did I really? Do you know what I mean? And
I do, but we're in that era now though where you can just go on YouTube and you can watch it again. You know, it's now that, you know, it's not truly lost to time. There is still record of it, and yes, you don't get the feeling and the smell and everything. I get that, but you still can. You can trigger the memories of the experience by watching these, you know, ride throughs and what have you. So it's not the end of the world for me, though. Of course, the top of the list is always going to be the Carousel of Progress. I do have another couple that I wish to throw out there, and I wish to get your sort of thoughts on them as to whether or not they're emotional per se. Spaceship Earth.
so that was on my radar. I was thinking about kind of, again, that more nostalgia feel that I have with Spaceship Earth. I feel it's less emotional and more thought-provoking, maybe. You know, thinking about where we have been, how, you know, like the passage of time happened, and when things were invented or things were being discovered. And, you know, it's quite educational when you think about it. I never knew that the Phoenicians made the alphabet, and hence why it's called the phonetics alphabet. Do you know what I mean? Before riding that ride, I don't think I would have got that through education anywhere else.
No, that's true. That's true. I do think Spaceship Earth is the epitome of the edutainment that Epcot used to stand for. The idea of the education and entertainment portions coming together to be able to give the rider, in this case, the experience with a little bit of education. In terms of emotion, I think amongst the Epcot rides, it's probably the one that I think it most captures that idea of emotion. But you're right. For me, the fireworks, when it used to be Illuminations, Reflections of Earth, the sort of the music and the coordinated fireworks on that really did. That was my sort of favorite part. I have another one that I wish to throw across to you as an idea, and I'm lumping these together now. But the likes of It's a Small World, Peter Pan's Flight, the traditional rides that are still within Magic Kingdom, I think that they're probably slightly more emotional than if you go and compare it to, Cosmic Rewind.
Yeah, I would agree, because it again has that nostalgic old Disney feel to it. It's, you know, kind of Walt had a hand in those type of attractions. You know, he never used to think about it. Well, he wouldn't have ever thought about anything like Cosmic Rewind. You know, that's just not, you know, in his thought process at all. But yeah, I feel like thinking around Fantasyland, like the carousel, for example,
Yep.
can be a bit emotional, because, you know, I think of, again, Walt sitting on the bench watching his children play on the carousel, and just that meaning to me, you know, thinking about why I'm sat where I am, not the actual attraction itself being emotional because I'm sat on a plastic horse that's going around and around and around. It's more what that stands for and why that is where it is.
And I think if people, I think of the example of people who are really interested in animals, and especially sort of, you know, wilder animals. You think of the Kilimanjaro safaris. I imagine for some people that could be considered an emotional experience, that, you know, you may be seeing your favorite animal in the flesh for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially going with some people who we know and they absolutely love animals, and seeing their reaction to the animals that are just right next to the car is emotional, isn't it? You know, it doesn't make you cry, but it makes you feel emotion, which is nice.
It does, and I also think as well, part of what makes some of the things the emotional side, and we touched upon it earlier, but I've just been developing the thought, is the enjoyment that children get, that your children get when they're on it. You think that ingrains a different sort of enjoyment, whereas the carousel or the teacups, for example, by themselves are of no material interest. But it's those rides that the little ones are able to do, and you see the excitement that they get out of it, and it really does change the experience. That adds this emotional component that I think the attractions themselves, the ride themselves, don't necessarily do, especially if you're, you know, somebody my age and you're flying solo.
Yeah, definitely. I think that when I used to go, obviously without children, before I was a mum, I would kind of go for the fast rides, I'd go for the thrills, I'd go for the ones
The Carousel of Progress. Yeah.
Carousel of Progress was way down on my list. It was I'm way too hot, I need aircon, I'm going to sit down for 25 minutes. But definitely now being in a different season of life and being a mum and seeing the children enjoy it through their eyes, and it makes me feel emotional thinking I'm creating a core memory for them right now, you know, and I think about what they're going to tell their friends or, you know, their husbands, wives, whatever, when they grow up, you know, oh, when I was a kid I used to do this, and when I was a kid I used to do that. And I just think, you know, like, I'm making that memory, and that's the part that makes me emotional.
Yeah, it does, but I think especially taking small children to Disney, we don't do it for them, we do it for us. It's quite selfish, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
That's not to say I wouldn't do it, but I'm just saying it's quite selfish. They're not gonna, you know, for the age of 2, they have no cognitive memory anyway, so it doesn't really matter in terms of, you know, being able to show them a photo of when they were meeting Tigger at 12 months old is irrelevant. They're not going to remember it, but it's sort of for us, really, isn't it? It's a little bit selfish.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that in terms of, we took my daughter when she was 18 months old and we took her for her first haircut in the barber shop. Now, I am under no illusion that she will remember that haircut at all. You know, she was like sat in the chair thinking, what is going on? I've had a snip here and a snip there. She's put it up and I've got a hat on. What's going on? Yeah. But it's the photos, it's the memories for us, and it's also something to give to them and say, you know, you did this when you were little. You know,
yeah, I think the photo thing's really interesting. Obviously, we take more photos now than ever before, fine. But how many of them do we actually sort of print off and actually observe? I distinctly remember, and I don't remember the photo being taken, but I've crafted a narrative around it afterwards. But when I was probably 2, maybe 3 years old at one of the all-star resorts, the photo of me that used to be hung up in Granddad's garage. Of me like this with 3-year-olds. I don't remember that being taken, and of course I don't remember. And I sort of inadvertently have, from the pieces of information other people have told me, have crafted this narrative. But the nostalgia and emotion that I hold to a photo that I'm pretty sure that backshot doesn't even exist anymore. It's I think Disney does that in a way, or causes that in a way that no other attraction does. To conclude my point of view, I still maintain that if you're asking truly an attraction, I have cried on the Carousel of Progress more than once, and that's the only one that's really done it for me. Whereas I understand, you know, when you take children to these things, it adds a different dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's when we've been thinking about this episode, I was really racking my brains to think, God, it's Disney. It must make me emotional. Why can I not think of a ride that makes me emotional? And then I was thinking, actually, it is more the things around that ride. It's not the ride itself. It's more either you go with your children or you see a friend experience it for the first time. And, you know, it's all those things around it rather than the ride itself, which is why I think this one was so tricky.
Agreed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let us know what you think is the most emotional ride in Walt Disney World. As usual, we'll be here again next week, as we are every week. But until then, please stand clear of the doors. Bye, everybody.